pull up. Grab the fuel nozzle and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of The Truck Stops Here, brought to you by the NATSO Foundation. Now, here's your host, Amy Toner.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner. You are listening to The Truck Stops Here, the NATSO Foundation's podcast. The NATSO Foundation is a research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO. This podcast is just one of the many educational tools the foundation creates. Today, I'm so lucky. I have my very special guest, Miss LeeAnn Goheen. She's NATSO's Senior Director of Government Affairs. Hi.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I asked you on today to talk about NATSO's Day on Capitol Hill. I thought we'd just start at the very beginning, which is like, when is it? What is it?
Easy.
Okay.
So you start easy and make it harder. Is that what you're going to do?
That's right.
So the dates, we're doing May 20th through 22nd this year.
Mm-hmm.
So right before you go into that Memorial Day, summer has started fun, come to Washington. It's Capitol Hill, or NATSO's Day on Capitol Hill is an opportunity for the entire industry to come together and unite as one voice. We have a benefit of having travel centers located in nearly every congressional district across the country. So the breadth and strength of our membership really gives us an opportunity to speak with one voice on issues that matter to travel center operators. And it's a huge advantage in building relationships with representatives in Washington. So I really encourage everybody to take the chance if they can.
So why should travel centers attend?
You know that saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. And so I think if you don't come to DC and build relationships and explain to your representatives what your business does and why it matters to them and why it matters to you, they're not going to be able to be on the lookout for policies that are good or bad and that could have an impact on your business. So it's really important to make a friend before you need a friend. And Day on the Hill is an opportunity to come in and introduce yourself and explain your business. And so it's crucial that they get to know you and understand that you're a major constituent and an employer in your back home, and they should understand what matters to you.
I know also they can meet with their members here or the staff, but then also when they're back in their own home, they could also meet with them, right?
That's right. And we are happy to help make that connection in DC and then have them come to your travel center when you're back home, where it's one thing to talk about your business when you're in DC, but then if you can make that connection back home and show them, here's where we take payments, here's how we store fuel, all of those things, and show them your business, it really makes that connection, and it makes our job back in DC so much easier.
So what are the issues that we're looking at this year?
So we have two issues that are our focus this year and are really important to the travel center industry. The first one is the biodiesel blenders tax credit. And so the BTC has allowed travel centers to really invest in lower carbon renewable fuels and, lower the price of that fuel and be able to, introduce that into the supply. It's been critical to, our industry. It's helped our industry grow, but it also allows us to sell renewable fuels, at a price that's lower than straight diesel, which is important in order for consumers to use that fuel. And so that tax credit is changing at the end of this year. And so it's important for our industry to come to DC and explain to them what that change is going to do to the industry, what impact that will have on fuel. And so that's going to be a big issue that we talk about. And the other one is about funding infrastructure and highway programs. The discussions on the next highway bill are going to start soon. That highway bill will be drafted in the next couple of years. And it's always to our industry's benefit to have robust highway programs, strong infrastructure. The question is always about the mechanism to fund those programs. So NATSO at NATSO Connect really recently reaffirmed our funding policy principles. And that's always supporting a user-based fee, and capturing all types of technology. And so how we do that is, up for discussion. And there's a lot of ideas floating around DC. And we want to talk to lawmakers about things that make sense for the industry. At the same time, when those discussions are happening, bad ideas come up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the main one there is, if there are discussions about undermining the ban on rest area commercialization, our industry has to stick together and explain to lawmakers that the rest area commercialization ban is critical to the industry's success and it must be upheld. And so those are conversations we'll have in DC this year.
Okay. Well, we'll get to this next, but, what if they've never done it before, right? So those are complicated issues. You've been lobbying on them all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
How's it work? What do they need to know? And what if they've never come before? It can be daunting,
I understand if you're nervous. I still get nervous too, don't tell. But we try to make that experience as easy as possible and pair you with either a veteran NATSO member who has done this for many years or with NATSO staff. I'm in meetings all day. My team, David and Jesse and Teresa and Tiffany, are all doing meetings all day with NATSO members to try to make that as easy and comfortable as possible. The thing I try to tell people to remember is you know more about your business and your employees than senators and their staff do. So you should feel really confident explaining your experience and the issues that you face and see, and offering to be a resource on those issues. You're not failing if all that comes out of that meeting is building a relationship. It's not a failure if you don't know the answer to a question. That's what we're here for. So NATSO Government Affairs team will always follow up with more information. So that's an easy way if you feel uncomfortable. But really the goal here is just to make a connection and build a relationship. You don't have to be the policy expert. You just have to talk about your business and explain to what your day looks like to these folks.
And you can sort of give them a bunch of tools, right? There's the app and the handouts.
Absolutely. We make sure you're as prepared as you can be. We have a training on the first day that walks through all of the issues that we're talking about. We give you talking points in advance so that you can study and say, these are the 3 main points I'm trying to make on this issue. And then we practice. We have a lot of that back and forth, and just to make sure you're comfortable talking about the issue. And we also have send along some background reading in advance. So you'll have some time to study and look at things before you arrive in Washington. And then when you're in Washington, you can ask us all those questions if you're not clear on an issue or a point. And like I said, we give you information to leave with the office, and then we follow up. And so you're always, you should feel comfortable that you cannot mess it up. If we can do this, I promise you can do this.
Absolutely. I always, my role is usually just to stay in the hospitality room as people go to the meetings. And it's so funny to watch them in the morning. They're so nervous and they're not sure. And then they come back and they're always so excited. And they just, it's a lot easier than I think people think,
I think that's true. And I don't want to speak in absolute, but a lot of people, when I've said, trust me, just come one time. And if you don't like it, I'll never ask you again. And they keep coming back. Because I think once you get here and realize it's fun, and most people are nice and just trying to learn what you do. They're happy to see somebody from back home and not a DC lobbyist all the time. It's more fun than you might imagine.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I always, something that I like about people in politics is they're people, right? They're used to talking to people. And so the same with our industry. Seems like probably they have these great conversations. Okay. So speaking of good conversations, going to the Hill is absolutely the most important part of the meeting, but it's also this such a small, intimate, great group of people that come together and sort of network. And they're all our members are always smart, and I don't know, it's just a great group. So I thought I'd just ask you, besides going to the Hill, are there any other parts of the event?
Yeah. And I think you're right. We focus so much on the Capitol Hill meetings because that's the part people are nervous about, that we don't do a good enough job, I think, selling on all of the fun we have in the, before and after. So to kick off the week, we're going to have an education panel that's going to have experts come in to discuss energy policy and recent regulations and legislation coming together along with this court case at the Supreme Court is going to have an impact on travel centers and the policies that dictate the refueling marketplace. And we're going to see that play out this summer and then this fall and ongoing. And so having that panel of experts have a discussion, I think will be really interesting and give a little bit of context for the other issues that we're going to be talking about. We also have a nice dinner and cocktail reception that's hosted by NATSO's Chairman Circle and members. And so that's a really fun time to network with travel center operators and then also our vendor partners. And so it's a nice time. And like you said, an intimate group. I think one of the benefits of NATSO is that you don't get lost in the shuffle. We are a small enough group that you see a friendly face, you'll see them again. It's not you're not on your own. And we try to really make sure that we paired you up with somebody so you feel comfortable and to both networking and then in the Capitol Hill meetings as well. But the best part is NATSO's pie reception.
Oh, yeah. Tell them.
Yeah. So after we do a day's worth of meetings, we all gather in the Rayburn House office building for a party that includes pie and cocktails. It's attended by NATSO members that are there. Also, friends of the industry, other stakeholders come as well. And then congressional staff and a ton of members of Congress come down, have a piece of pie, have a drink, get to network with NATSO folks. And honestly, it's my favorite part of Day on the Hill. You'd be surprised how many staff members ask me throughout the year how they can get an invite to the pie party. And so it's a really nice time. So I'm glad that was back, or is back. Last year was our return after COVID. And I think this year is going to be the best one.
Those receptions on Capitol Hill are sort of a dime a dozen, right? There's one every day, but I feel like the pie reception is just something totally special to see that, like, first of all, everyone's just happy. Like, who's not happy with pie?
Who's not happy with
pie? We have this really long table with 40 different kinds of pie. And,
yeah. I think last year we had over 100 pies. And people were really thrilled to come in. And like you said, it's unique. It's one thing to have a cocktail reception for, this trade association in town, that trade association in town. But the pie part is something that people remember. And they're really always happy to come back again.
Okay. Before I'm going to let you go soon, but what do you wish people knew about NATSO's Capitol Hill, Day on Capitol Hill, that they may not know?
Kind of what we talked about a minute ago. The issues are serious. And what we're doing is very important, but let's have a good time and let's not take ourselves too seriously. And so that's really a nice opportunity. There's a lot of things that are important, and it's critical for you to come and share about your business. Yeah, but the day-to-day part is a pretty good time, and people enjoy doing it. And so it's so stressful once you get up here and you're with all of us. And like I said, NATSO's a little bit more of an intimate experience. And so, you aren't just one of many. We're thrilled to have you, and we want to make sure it's as enjoyable as possible whenever you're here.
Okay. Before I let you go, usually at the end of the podcast, I do some fun travel center related questions.
Yeah.
But since I already know you like iced coffee, gross.
I do.
I'm going to ask you a few questions related to NATSO. A few NATSO Day on Capitol Hill fun questions.
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Selfies with members of Congress. Good idea or bad idea?
It's all about your manners. If you ask very nicely at the end of the meeting, most people comply.
Okay. Do you prefer to walk or Uber between the Senate and House side?
I love to walk if the weather is nice.
Right.
And I have enough time between meetings and my feet don't hurt in my shoes. Otherwise, no shame in an Uber. No shame.
Yeah. What is the craziest Hill meeting you've ever had?
Usually it's when something goes like completely off script, like a picture falls off of a wall and nobody knows how to react. That's usually what the craziest stuff is. It's not, usually people are nice and there's no weird like policy discussions. It's just somebody spills a drink everywhere and then you kind of get to know people and how they react to the mess.
That's funny. It is sort of I think members of Congress's offices are way smaller than you would think. So I would imagine there's a lot of spilling that happens in those like tight spaces.
Or you're meeting out in the hall and you're trying to have a serious discussion and you're like the hall and you're like, and it's like loud and people are running by you and you're like, I'll send you an email thing.
Okay. So this is sort of a non-question, but one thing that I think is, it can be hot, but in general, May is like this magical weather in DC. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think it's the last time before the humidity sets in.
Right.
You're still able, like, last year was stunning and we were able to walk around and all of that and take photos outside. It really is a nice chance. And then it doesn't get that good again until like the fall. Right.
I know. It's like the last hurrah.
Yeah.
Okay. How many times do you think David is going to mention Tom Brady during the presentation?
At least 2. It's harder and harder now that Brady has retired. So I think his ability to sneak it in underscores his creativity. And so I think we have to look at the positive side. Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, what's your favorite place to go for when you have downtime in between meetings?
So I love to be with the people. That will be no shock to you. So Longworth Cafeteria, Duncan, in the middle of it. I like to see the people watching. It's great. You get to see all kinds of nonsense. But then on the Senate side, Senate Chef is between Dirksen and Hartson and office building. And that's a nice spot and a little quieter too.
Okay. Thanks, LeeAnn.
Happy to do it. Have me back again.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at natso.com/podcast. If you have any questions or you want to come on the podcast, reach out to me at editor@natso.com. Bye.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by the NATSO Foundation, the research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO. The Truck Stops Here is produced by the NATSO Foundation in collaboration with Human Factor. Producers are Amy Toner and Darren Schulte.